I'm Jack Bradley, filling in here for Steve Lance. The recovery operations continue for the remains of the passengers aboard the two aircraft that collided midair over D.C.'s Potomac River Wednesday night. Our Washington correspondent Luis Eduardo Martinez has more on this story.
The National Transportation Safety Board has recovered the data and voice recorder aboard that American Airlines flight flying from Wichita, Kansas to Washington, D.C. that collided mid-air with a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter Wednesday night. Authorities are working around the clock to recover the remains of those 67 people who lost their lives in that tragic accident and to contact next of kin.
As I said, we did family briefings last night. And today, there are over 100 family members that are now in the area receiving briefings, and as part of a legislative requirement, receiving family assistance. They have been briefed by the medical examiner, the fire chief, NTSB chairman, and myself, along with the family assistant unit from PSA Airlines.
According to comments made by Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth and echoing comments made by President Trump, early reports indicate that the U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter was potentially flying way above its regular altitude. Helicopters flying through this corridor are advised to fly at 200 feet above ground, and early reports indicate that the U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter on Wednesday night might have been traveling close to 400 feet above ground.
And the president was clear about that. Someone was at the wrong altitude. The investigation will help us understand that. Was the Black Hawk too high? Was it on course? Right now, we don't quite know. But
experienced pilots familiar with the D.C. airspace and landing at Reagan National Airport have suggested that visibility issues could have led to this tragic accident.
For aircraft to land on 3-3 it's not unusual, but it wasn't the norm. And I had that exact same incident several years ago where I was flying south down the route at night, and there was a commercial jet landing on 3-3, and I could not see him. I lost him in the city lights there in Anacostia around DIA. You can't see him.
An internal FAA safety report suggests that on the night of the accident, the air traffic control tower was understaffed with one person manning the position of two to communicate with both helicopters and airplanes. And in a different report from 2023, it showed that air traffic control tower from Reagan National Airport has been chronically understaffed for a couple of years, with at least 19 people on average manning that tower as opposed to 30, which is the optimal level. Reporting from Washington, D.C., Luis Eduardo Martinez, NTD News.
President Trump not changing his mind. Steep tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China will take effect tomorrow, and there's little those countries' leaders can do to avoid them. NTD's White House correspondent Iris Tao has more.
President Trump moving ahead with a 25% tariff on Mexico and Canada and a 10% tariff on China, all beginning on Saturday, February 1st. He says there's no way for these countries to stop it.
Mr. President, is there anything China, Canada, and Mexico can do tonight to forestall your implementation of tariffs tomorrow?
No, nothing. Not right now, no.
Not a negotiating tool?
No, it's not. No, it's a pure economic. We have big deficits with, as you know, with all three of them.
President Trump says these countries are sending in massive amounts of fentanyl, killing hundreds of thousands of people. Meanwhile, the outgoing Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau pushing back, saying he won't relent until tariffs are removed. The White House press secretary responding.
Justin Trudeau would be wise to talk to President Trump directly before pushing outlandish comments like that to the media.
Mexico says the two countries should keep talking, adding millions of families in the U.S. would also be affected. The U.S. does import 1/3 of its goods and services from these three countries. But President Trump saying he's not worried about market reactions, and then the White House adding that it won't make goods more expensive in the U.S.
Look at what President Trump did in his first term. He effectively implemented tariffs, and the average inflation rate during the first Trump administration was 1.9%. In fact,
and more tariffs are on the way. President Trump recently saying that the app DeepSeek is sounding an alarm about an AI race with China. And on Friday, after meeting with NVIDIA CEO at the White House, President Trump says he's rolling out tariffs on chips as early as February 18th. Other items he's vowing to target include oil, gas, and steel, and ultimately copper. And in other news, the White House confirmed to NTD that administration is telling federal workers to scrub gender pronouns from their email signatures.
And Stephen, a follow on that question, can you confirm that the administration has the executive orders that President signed?
Yes, I believe that the directive you're referring to is consistent with the President's Day 1 executive order for all of humanity, but his authorities.
And President Trump is spending his weekend at Mar-a-Lago in Florida, telling us on his way out that he's working all weekend. Reporting from the White House, Iris Tao, NTD News.
A former senior advisor for the Federal Reserve has been charged with economic espionage. He's allegedly stole trade secrets and lied to authorities during the investigation. The indictment was unsealed by the Department of Justice today. It alleges John Harold Rogers leaked secret information to Beijing. Rogers was a senior advisor at the Federal Reserve Board of Governors, the body that helps set interest rates for the U.S. Central Bank. The DOJ says that the information Rogers shared with his Chinese counterparts was, quote, economically valuable when secret. Some of that information dealt with tariffs. His counterparts worked with Chinese intelligence and posed as graduate students. U.S. Attorney Edward R. Martin, Jr., who announced the indictment, said, "Let this indictment serve as a warning to all those who seek to betray or exploit the United States. Law enforcement will find you and hold you accountable." And contentious hearings for President Trump's nominees for Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and FBI Director nominee Kash Patel. For more on their hearings and policies, if confirmed, we're joined by Rick De La Torre. He's the Senior Vice President of Strategic Risk and Intelligence at Continental Strategy and former CIA Senior Operations Officer. Rick De La Torre, thank you very much for joining us here today. I want to go over some key takeaways from Tulsi Gabbard's hearing and your thoughts on the likelihood of her nomination. As we know, it's very uncommon for a nominee to not be confirmed by the Senate. What's your take?
I think it's going to be a squeaker. I suspect at the end of the day, she probably will be confirmed, but I wouldn't be surprised if it even comes down to a tie. I think, and by the way, I think Tulsi, just to get this out, right? I'm very proud and thankful for her service in the U.S. Army and the great things she's done. However, I think it's important also to note that she's kind of had almost like a whiplash notion regarding her politics over just the last year or so. She's been a lifelong Democrat. Then after that, when she ran on the Democratic ticket and that was unsuccessful, she then decided to now support the Republican, become an independent, and then to support the Republican candidate who later became president. I think the president's done a great job by honoring his promises of appointing her to some cabinet position, but really the U.S. Senate needs to make sure that the scrutiny that they apply during the hearings is something that hopefully resonates with her and something that they could possibly follow up with her if she does get confirmed. At first, she was not as supportive on 702 and FISA collection. That's something that's a big concern to anyone in the intelligence community. And she advocated for a large amount of time for Snowden and even submitted legislation to try to get Snowden pardoned. So those are issues that I think a lot of folks within the intelligence community are just going to have some doubts about.
I want to move on to Kash Patel now and your assessment of how it went with his confirmation hearings, his likelihood of going through there, and also his stance that we know of what he's been talking about policy-wise, if confirmed.
Well, in Kash's case, one can easily see, right, he has always been a conservative in his political views, right? And he has plenty of years of working within either the Justice Department or on the Hill or in national security positions. So there, I think it's very hard to make the argument that he doesn't have the experience or the know-how, right? Now, what I found was most of the senators were really just focusing on the politics of the issues and really didn't have much evidence to demonstrate that he couldn't handle the job if he was appointed to be the director of FBI. I know that obviously the FBI, it's not just the opinion of this administration, but even the previous administration has been overly politicized. The same with the Department of Justice, where they prosecute or pursue, the lawfare that many of us have witnessed over the last few years. I think someone like Kash Patel can do really well as director of FBI and bring the FBI back to what it needs to do, which is, enforce the laws that are on the books, prosecute the bad guys, and try to get their name out of the paper and focus more on, on doing the things that will make Americans feel safe at night, and not things like, report on parents, who are at school board meetings, or people who attend the Latin Catholic Mass. Those are the issues that causes a lot of concerns amongst Americans. And I think Kash Patel and the president are tuned into that, and they're going to make the appropriate changes once he gets into the job.
And during the hearing, Patel also committed to not weaponize or politicize the FBI and not seek any kind of retribution. Why would there be this concern in the first place?
Look, I think there's a huge trust gap right now. And it's a trust gap between the American people and intelligence communities and law enforcement like the FBI, basically just about every federal agency. And there's also a trust gap between this incoming administration and the folks that are currently running those agencies and bureaus. So early on, I think that concern about lawfare is really misplaced, at least from my perspective. The rank and file of the FBI are amazing folks. The rank and file of the CIA, the DNI, and just about any law enforcement, DHS, all the law enforcement and intelligence agencies. Again, just amazing folks, rank and file. They're there for the mission. They believe in what they do. They're trying to defend the United States. They're trying to catch the bad guys. It's really at the senior levels, the folks that are really focusing on trying to either get that next promotion or get their name in the paper or try to reach the pinnacle of their agency. Those are the ones, unfortunately, that tend to really bring down the entire organization and agency that they're supposed to lead. I suspect with the changes in leadership that are happening and those that just aren't on board, right, with toning down the lawfare, right, keeping the politics out of what we do, whether it's collecting intelligence or investigating crime. I think those folks are just going to feel the pressure that maybe it's time to move on, and I think we'll be better for it as a country.
Mm-hmm. Rick De La Torre, thank you very much for your insight here today.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.